Today I'll be reading from An Idea to Google by Loie Bundy Sickle, chapters 3, 4, and 5. Chapter 3 is called Searching for an Idea. In 1996, the World Wide Web, or Internet, was still very new, with only 100,000 websites, not many compared to the billions today. Most people only use the Internet for email, although thousands of new websites were popping up each day. Back then, technology looked very different from how it looks today. Desktop computers came in two pieces, a monitor and a separate larger component that included the hard drive and a floppy disk drive. Internet access ran through a cord with no Wi-Fi. Cell phones had long antennas. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook didn't exist, and Apple's iPhone wouldn't be invented for another 12 years. That same year, Larry Page was busy thinking about his doctoral thesis at Stanford University. A doctoral thesis is a project where graduate students try to figure out a solution to a complicated problem and write a long report about it. Larry had an idea for his doctoral thesis. He was intrigued by the Internet and how search engines retrieved websites. Search engines are programs that search for and identify items in a database that corresponds to keywords specified by the user. Search engines are used to find particular websites or information on the Internet. Back then, search engines like Yahoo, AltaVista, Hotbot, and Excite existed, but they searched for results by scanning every single website looking for keywords. That meant the websites with the highest number of keywords, the words a user typed into the search engine, showed up first. Larry didn't think using keywords produced good results for two reasons. One, with so many new websites launching each day, it took a very long time for early search engines to scan all the websites and bring up results. Two, early search engines did not have a system in place to consider how important the information on each website was. This meant that looking for websites with the highest number of keywords on them often retrieved irrelevant and illogical results. An idea to rank differently. Larry had an idea. Instead of ranking websites based on the number of keywords, Larry wanted to rank websites by how many other websites linked to them. It was comparable to how citations work. Citations are the way academic research papers reference back to other papers. Citations are important, Larry explained. It turns out people who win the Nobel Prize have citations from 10,000 different papers. Larry took his ranking idea one step further. He believed that the links coming from other websites differed in importance too. He considered the links coming from popular websites, those also with lots of links to them, to be more important than the links coming from less popular websites or those with few links to them. Larry started working on a link ranking system and called it PageRank, appropriately named after his last name. Forming a search party. By now, Sergey and Larry had put their initial disagreements behind them and had become good friends. Larry knew that Sergey was a mathematical genius and believed that his exceptional skills would be critical to calculating the mathematical structure between all the Internet's links. Sergey was intrigued by the idea of analyzing huge amounts of data for Larry's PageRank project. They decided to partner up and soon realized they were a great team. Backrub, their first search engine. Larry and Sergey got to work. They downloaded the entire World Wide Web onto their computers and started analyzing its links and ranking websites. They worked for many hours every single day, even on weekends and holidays. Larry remembers, "We started working really hard on it. There was an important lesson for us." By early 1997, Larry and Sergey had developed their first search engine called Backrub to test out how well PageRank worked. The initial results were astounding. Backrub produced useful search results in a logical order of importance and in a fraction of the time of other search engines. Sergey explained, "We saw that 1,000 results weren't necessarily as useful as 10 good ones." An accidental name. By the fall of 1997, Backrub was a superior search engine, but Larry and Sergey wanted to come up with a new name that was catchy and more interesting. For days, they wrote different names on a whiteboard and rejected them. One day, a classmate named Sean Anderson suggested Googleplex. It was a mathematical term, the numeral 1 followed by a Google zeros. Larry liked it, but wanted something shorter and asked, "How about we try Google?" That was also a mathematical term. The numeral 1 followed by 100 zeros. Sean accidentally mistyped Google, which is Googol, and typed Google, Google, into the internet to see if the website name was available. Google.com was available and they registered it immediately. However, the next morning, Larry and Sergi realized Sean's spelling mistake. A quick look online revealed that the correctly spelled domain name, www.googol.com, was not available, so Google, Google, was officially born by accident. Engineering the Google logo. And a logo is a picture or symbol that companies use to identify themselves. Logos come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. With a new name came a new logo. Larry and Sergi wanted the Google logo to be simple, with a clean font and bright colors. The result was a multicolored, almost childlike Google, where G equals blue, O equals red, the next O equals yellow, G equals blue, L equals green, and E equals red. The word was placed upon a white background. Chapter 4. In Search of the Future. Larry and Sergi quickly learned that running Google was time-consuming and required lots of expensive computer equipment. Since they had little money, they bought parts and built their own computers. Sometimes they borrowed unclaimed equipment from Stanford's loading dock. Sergi explained, "We would just borrow a few machines, figuring if they didn't pick it up right away, they didn't need it so badly." Soon, both of their dorm rooms had turned into overflowing data centers. To stay organized, Larry built storage containers out of Lego bricks. They turned out to be perfect for the job. Inexpensive, durable, and easy to change into various sizes. Google for sale. Before long, most of the students at Stanford University were using Google. It was powerful, smart, fast, and easy to use. Much better than any search engine before it. But as Google grew in popularity, a new problem arose. Larry and Sergi were having a hard time juggling Google and being full-time students. Running Google took up all their time. Larry and Sergi discussed their options. They could sell Google and stay in school, or they could leave Stanford and focus all their effort on launching Google as a real company. Both men were torn. Larry's father, Carl, had recently died from complications lingering from having polio as a child. He knew how much his Stanford education meant to his dad and thought staying in school might be a nice tribute. Sergi was torn because he wasn't sure that all the hard work of running a company was for him. They decided to try to sell Google. Larry and Sergi approached AltaVista in hopes of selling Google for $1 million. When AltaVista turned them down, Larry and Sergi approached other search engines, including Yahoo and Excite, but they said no as well. In fact, every single company Larry and Sergi approached did not want to buy Google. Taking a risk. After being rejected so many times, Sergi turned to a trusted professor and asked for advice on whether he should stay in school or leave Stanford to focus on Google. The professor turned to Sergi and said, "Look, if this Google thing pans out, then great. If not, you can return to graduate school and finish your thesis." It was decided. Larry and Sergi packed up their belongings and left Stanford University, hoping to turn Google into a successful company. Chapter 5. Launching to the World. Larry and Sergi needed two things before they could launch Google: a place to work and money to help run the business. In August 1998, the two men reached out to a man named Andy Bechtolsheim, who was the co-founder of a company called Sun Microsystems. Andy liked the idea of Google, proclaiming, "This is the single best idea I have heard in years. I want to be part of this." He handed Larry and Sergi a check for $100,000, making him the first person to invest in Google. And invest means giving money to a company or enterprise with the expectation that it will become successful and profitable, making money for the investor. In exchange for the money, Andy received a portion of the profits as Google grew bigger. It was a good investment. 15 years later, Andy's $100,000 was $1,700,000,000. Google now needed an office space. A friend of Sergi's named Susan Wojcicki offered to rent them her garage for $1,700 a month. Larry and Sergi accepted the offer, packed up their computers and equipment, and set up Google's first headquarters in Susan's garage in Menlo Park, California. On September 4th, 1998, Google launched to the world. Raising money. Almost immediately, stories about Google's search engine appeared in newspapers and magazines across the country. Most reporters gushed over the speed and accuracy of Google's search engine, claiming that this startup company from Stanford University was changing the way the internet worked. Just 2 months after launching, PC Magazine named Google a search engine of choice. It became clear that to keep up with demand, Larry and Sergey needed even more money so they could hire additional engineers and purchase sufficient computer equipment. Between friends and family, they quickly raised $1 million. Google's first employee was a fellow PhD student from Stanford named Craig Silverstein. Within 5 months, Google had 8 employees, all engineers, and had outgrown Susan's garage. They moved into an office on University Avenue in Palo Alto, California. By early 1999, Google was handling over 100,000 search queries a day and growing fast. In fact, demand for Google was so high that money became an issue again. They needed significantly more money to help purchase the equipment and hire the employees necessary to keep up with such a fast pace of growth. Larry and Sergey turned to 2 venture capital firms. And those are companies that provide a financial investment to startup companies and small businesses in hopes that they will have long-term growth. So the 2 venture capital firms were Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital. Both firms were impressed with Larry and Sergey and their vision for Google. Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital each agreed to invest $12.5 million in Google under one condition. Larry and Sergey had to hire an experienced person to become the CEO of Google. This new CEO would help figure out how Google would make money. Larry and Sergey agreed to the condition and soon had $25 million in the bank. Good thing too, because Google had outgrown its office space again. Google soon moved into a larger office space at 2400 Bayshore Parkway in Mountain View, California. And that was chapters 3, 4, and 5.